no matter how broken you are, you can still put pieces of yourself together and move forward because life is like a puzzle in a way. You have to find the pieces, put them together, and complete the puzzle before your clock is over in this realm anyway. Because even though there's the cliche of life's a box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get. At the end of the day, when you do the hindsight 2020, you realize, you know what? Everything in life happens for a reason. Because, like my father, he passed away in 2017, and that was the same year I was going to be certified into John Maxwell. That was the goal, but that would be put on hold because of some grieving and taking care of the family and everything. And realizing that 2 years later, like, hey, God's delays are not denials. And realizing that, you know what? Even though I set this goal in 2017 and it happened 2 years later, it still happened because even though I put it down and when you write things down, they'll happen, but God's timing was different.
Are you confident? Do you have consistency? How much conviction do you have? I'm Daniel Gomez, the Confidence Architect, a business strategist, keynote speaker, executive coach, and best-selling author. On the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, we will help you unlock confidence to create consistency and develop conviction. Together, we will discover the key that unlocks your confidence. Welcome to another episode of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show. What a great week we've had here, and with a great week comes another great guest, and I'm super excited for this guest that we have. You know, we've been having a great quality of guest speakers come in, and business owners, and just people, right? Individuals. And this person is an amazing individual who I just really admire and look up to, because no matter what challenges come their way, he doesn't think I notice his Facebook feed probably, but I see that he's always staying active and he's real consistent in everything that he does. So Dominique Brightmon, welcome to the show. How you doing today, my friend?
And I'm doing great, man. Thanks so much for having me on, man. Let's rock the house.
Woo, man. Well, I'll tell you what, all the way from Baltimore, Maryland. I love this guy. This guy is just consistent. I'm going to call him Mr. Consistency. With Dominique, I like my guests to introduce themselves. So if you could do me a favor, just let the world, let the audience of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show know who you are, my brother.
Oh, my pleasure indeed. The DGI, the Daniel Gomez Inspires crew, baby. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. For those who've been living under all the rocks names, Dominique Dom Brightmon, land of the charm, crime and crabs, Baltimore, Maryland is where I'm from. And I'm all about inspiring folks to be their best. My life mantra is advance others to advance yourself. And that all stems from back in 2012 where I got to this car accident and having to take care of my father who was stricken with Alzheimer's and going through all these setbacks, having to realize that that setback was really a story forward for personal growth and realizing that growth is happiness. So I'm all about personal growth, all about spiritual growth, and heck, even mind, body, and spirit. That's all part of growth. So that's really just a little bit about me, just a guy who had some setbacks and is trying to set them forward to greater growth for not only myself, but also others.
You know, I love what you just said. Growth is happiness. Setbacks. Let's talk about that for a minute. Setbacks. How many of us, we face a setback, Dominique? How many people do you know that face a setback? And for instance, like you said, a car accident, and that setback just shatters their life and they never bounce back. Do you know anybody like that? And why do people not bounce back from something like that?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. It takes a lot of things. It's really a mindset and a spiritual state sort of thing, because with at least me as an example, back in 2012 with the car accident, like I told my parents about it because I was on my way to IT security class, and they were so shocked at first, and then my mom was worried, but when she came and saw that I had no injuries, she was grateful. When we got home, and she was like, hey, God has big plans for you, because if you're still here, then you're still here for a reason. Like, especially if you go through severe stuff, like, hey, some folks may go through like drug addiction, certain addictions, and having setbacks in that way, but turning them into something great. And I think it's really just taking the time to think and really process everything of like, hey, this may be a moment where I could have died here, but I'm still here for a reason. And just taking the time to realize, like, hey, sometimes you lose. Well, sometimes you learn, and sometimes, yeah, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And this is one of those moments where it's like, you know what? I got to learn from this moment and realize that, hey, I'm still here for a reason. And people probably don't even think that way because they may have not had that person or that positive influence, or at least was open enough to receive that positive influence. Like, hey, you have value. You're alive. You have value.
I love that. You just brought out that John Maxwell. I love that book. Sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And you're so right on that. I love the fact that you just shared that wisdom because in life, I'm guilty of that because I'm that deep personality under pressure. That driver comes out and I want to be the best and I want to beat everybody, right? I just want to win all the championships. And sometimes when I would lose, I would really feel like, man, like a failure. Just be honest with it, right? When I was younger. But it's learning instead of losing that really just elevates your life, your business to that next level because it's not a matter that you lost. It's like, what are you learning through this process? And I love the way you just said that, man. Thank you for dropping that golden nugget. So let me ask you this. What did you learn in this season? I mean, because think about it. Car accidents, there ain't no joke. And let's get real, right? If you had a 1974 Chevy Monte Carlo and compare the car now, that you're going to be okay in any car accident in one of those year cars. Right? They're all steel metal. Now today's cars are just plastic and
Yep. Yep. Yep.
You know what I'm talking about, right? You got an old Impala, man. You could hit a pole and the pole's gonna fall down. Now you hit a pole and it's gonna cut your car in two.
You were so right. You were so darn right. Fiberglass ahoy everywhere.
That deserves a boom, baby. Man, I think a lot of the millennials right now are saying, like, how big were cars back then? Like, they were big, they were heavy. That's why you only got 10 miles a gallon.
Exactly, like raw metal, the real deal metal. Like you crash into something, you'd be all right. Like a dent wouldn't come out easy. Like, funny enough, like one time after class, I think it was like 10 degrees outside, and my car battery wouldn't unlock the car. It was dead. And then I hammer fisted my car out of aggression because I was so pissed that it was cold, and it actually left a dent in the car. I'm like, what the hell? I was like, I know I got strength, but I can't believe I left the dent in this car like that.
Oh man. Oh,
so you're
man.
right, man.
Crazy. Yeah. So I love that. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. So what did you learn about Dominique in that season of your life? What did you really learn about yourself? Let's get real, right? I love this show because it's about being real because right now there's enough fakes, there's enough. And the reason I wanted you to be on my show, because you're real, man. To me, you're the real deal. You show that it doesn't matter if you're in Baltimore or where you come from. If you want to make something of yourself, you can. And I have a lot of respect for you on that one, Dominique. So I just want you to know that, my brother.
My man, Dan, my brother D in Christ. There we go. That's right. Yes, indeed. But yes, indeed, that moment, man, it's one of the biggest things I learned about myself is that sometimes it takes a while for me to recoil and recover from setbacks because the accident itself, it's like when it happened, it was like time just stopped and I felt like and it felt like the world was going to end. Like my whole life didn't flash before my eyes in Japanese kanji, but it was really just a moment like, hey, one thing I learned about myself, I tend to be cerebral in a way. That's what one of my mentors told me is the fact that I tend to do a lot of thinking. And that's something that a lot of people need to do a lot more now than ever, is to do some thinking, especially some independent thinking. Because if you follow the group think model, like, hey, with this thing about everybody being an entrepreneur, like I'm going to be honest, like I still have my day job as a librarian full time because medical benefits, they're going to be most likely needed down the road in the back pocket as insurance. And this speaking, leading, coaching, and training thing, this isn't a full-time gig yet because entrepreneurship isn't for everybody, but it's good to have something in your back pocket and to realize like, hey, you got to do your own testing for yourself. Like, heck, even when it comes to publishing my books a few years later after doing some reading, it's like I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And I even was talking with this guy, Peter Cazador. He's got this book coming out called Honest to Greatness. And he was talking about how he doesn't know what he's doing half the time, but he just takes action. And that's really what we need nowadays. And it's so true. And I'm honored that you actually call me Mr. Consistent, because that's what I try to do. It's like, hey, I may not have the best equipment. Like, hey, I may have broken equipment right now, but I'm still able to at least have the voice carried through on this interview and still at least try to bring my best on there. It's like, that's could be a message for the person's listening right now. It's like, no matter how broken you are, you can still put pieces of yourself together and move forward, because life is like a puzzle in a way. You have to find the pieces, put them together, and complete the puzzle before your clock is over in this realm anyway. Because even though there's the cliche of life's a box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get. At the end of the day, when you do the hindsight 2020, you realize, you know what? Everything in life happens for a reason. Because, like my father, he passed away in 2017, and that was the same year I was going to be certified into John Maxwell. That was the goal, but that would be put on hold because of some grieving and taking care of the family and everything. And realizing that 2 years later, like, hey, God's delays are not denials. And realizing that, you know what? Even though I set this goal in 2017 and it happened 2 years later, it still happened, because even though I put it down, and when you write things down, they'll happen, but God's timing was different.
Wow. So this is the part where I like to tell our audience here at the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, this is time to get pen to paper, right? You got to get that pen and put that pen to paper now, because he's dropping some value bombs right here. And I just want to kind of just recap real quick what you said. I love what you said right here, Dominique. The fact that this is powerful. Yeah, I need to write this down, guys, ladies and gentlemen. No matter how broken you are, no matter how broken you are, how many pieces you have, you could have 5 pieces or 1,000,000 pieces. You can still pick up your pieces and move forward. I love that. That is so powerful. That's for somebody right now, Dominique, because I feel that, especially this season that we're in right now, we have a lot of people that lost their jobs, a lot of people that there's uncertainty in their life, and they have a lot of broken pieces because maybe they're that breadwinner for that family. And especially that person's going to have more pieces to pick up because they have children, they have their wife, they have their husband, that they have responsibility, right? And I love what you said. No matter how broken you are, you can always pick up the pieces and move forward. That was powerful. And the second thing that he said that I want to just really just talk about real quick is God's delays are not God's denials. I love that, because that, you know what that said to me was, God's delays are not God's denials. Sometimes we pray and pray for a blessing. We pray for this breakthrough. We ask for this, and we ask and we ask. And sometimes we're just not ready for it. And if we were to get that blessing in our life, I believe, Dominique, at that moment, it might even do us more harm than good. What do you think about that?
Hey, man, it's definitely true right there, because heck, even remember one time my father, when he was still alive, he would have this choking issue. Like for years, it was early millennium. He would have these issues where sometimes he would eat food and he ended up throwing it back up, on top of with this darn acid reflux he had on top of everything else. And there would be some days he wouldn't eat. And my family and I, we would pray for years that he would recover and heal from the situation. And one random day, it was on, funny enough, I think it was like my 14th or 15th birthday. We were actually at a restaurant, and my father announced his healing, because he was eating for the past few days with no issues before he actually told it to us. Because, you know, sometimes it's like you have your moment of healing or your moment of victory, and you really don't believe it yet. And then a couple of days go by, it's like, oh, shoot, this is real?
Yes. Yes. Man, I just love that. So let's talk about this, because one thing that I really love to do is man, you're starting off with so much wisdom right now and value. And I want to thank you for just playing all in today and just being authentic. Where in your journey did you lose your confidence? And where in that journey did you realize, man, I need to get this back? And what did you do to get it back? Because confidence is everything. I'm a true believer that there's no way you can win in life or in business without confidence. And confidence is that secret sauce that brings out the winners and the champions in all of us. So where in this journey did you lose your confidence, Dominique?
Oh, man, that's something I have to build up probably, I wouldn't say every day, but probably every other month, every now and then, because it's like with the power of podcasting now, with the podcast, the host, bringing all these guests on around the world. And heck, even probably the most biggest part what stuck out to me was probably about a couple years ago when I was working on my second book, talking about elite performance. And this was months in when I've gotten to millionaires and all these other wonderful folks doing these things out there. And this imposter syndrome kicked in. Is like, okay, I've been talking to all these great folks around the world. It's like, yeah, they're human just like me, but they've done so much more than me. And I'm gotten to that comparison gap trap of comparing myself to them and letting myself go down a real thinking like, hey, who the heck am I to write a book about elite performance? It's like these guys created millions of dollars and have all this influence all over the globe and whatnot. I was like, who the heck am I? Just some random black guy from Baltimore. And I was like, you know what? One of the best ways to get out of that moment is to figure out your why, because my first book, I had fun with it. And I said this follow-up book is going to be published 2 years later. And a thing that helped me to get out of that funk was telling people about that goal, because I had a good colleague named Robbie, and I told him about it, and he kept on asking me probably every other day. He's like, hey, Dom, how's the book coming along? How's the book coming along? And that's one of the keys to really rebuilding your confidence is recruiting folks who will hold you accountable to what you say you're going to do. Because like you mentioned earlier, like a lot of folks are tired of the fake people on social media posing next to these Lamborghinis and whatnot and not having nothing to show for it. And it's like, hey, you know what? Let me make sure I'm the real deal here and have folks that'll hold me to that deal. And the book eventually came out because he held me accountable, and I had to realize like, hey, even though I may not have on paper what they have, I still have something to offer. And there's people that I can reach that those folks will never be able to reach. Even Christ himself in the Gospels mentioned to the disciples before he was gone, it's like, hey, you will do greater works than me. Like, hey, social media on the positive note, like we could reach so many millions of more people than Jesus ever could in his human form when he was here in human form. So it's just keeping also that in mind. It's like having that accountability buddy and realizing that we all can do a greater work, whether it's 1 or 1 million.
I love what you said. People, I don't think people have. I like the way you explain that. I love the way how you said you gain your confidence back by having somebody accountable, somebody who holds you accountable, and that's so true because in reality, what they're doing is you're getting these small wins, right? So you have an accountability partner that's helping you to get these small wins, and the more you keep some of these smaller promises to yourself, you start to believe in yourself more, and that builds your confidence. And you're exactly right. I love that. I've heard it said a different way, but the way you said it, when you have an accountability partner to help you keep your own promises to yourself, boom, baby. That's where the confidence comes back at.
That's right, Boba Suder.
I love that, man. That's I've never heard anybody say that about confidence. So, man, I share you for sharing that wisdom. So let me ask you this. At that point, once you got your confidence back, what did you realize that you could do now, right? Because your partner's holding you accountable step by step. And now it's like, okay, so I got my confidence back. What's the next big task that you overcame and you went and dominated in that area that gave you even more confidence?
The next step was to really making sure that I was in my POP, my place of productivity, and getting into a place where I can actually focus on getting what I need to get done. Because one thing about confidence is something you have to reinforce, and you have to make sure that the confidence doesn't become arrogance, because I'm pretty sure we both know how arrogance can really kill, especially with pride and everything else. So that was the next step after that. It's like having that accountability to remind you of your goals and making sure you have people like that, because God bless them, because we all need that, because we can go so far in one direction if we don't have someone to pull our coattails in a way to remind us of what we said we were going to do, then we're going to fall off of the tracks. And then once you get back on track, get refocused and regroup, and then keep going forward after that and getting that silence in. And that even times of prayer too, because there was times that I even forgot to pray because I was still going through some grief that I had no idea that was still in me. And that's another thing too that a lot of folks probably may have been even scared to do during the pandemic season was, darn, I'm out of work, I lost my job, and I'm stuck here with myself. I may be stuck with my wife that I thought I liked, and these kids are driving me crazy because they all have this energy, and I'm like, how the hell am I going to feed them? And just all this other stuff. And it's really just deciding, finding a way, at least give yourself at least a good 5 minutes of silence a day, at least 5 minutes of silence minimum, and make it even longer if you have to be with yourself, and also give yourself some time to be with God as well, because we can be physical and great and have mental mindset and all this other good stuff in the physical realm. But to be able to check in with yourself spiritually is definitely where you're going to have that extra advantage, because spirit is really where you're going to be able to go 2 extra miles as opposed to the regular extra mile.
Man, you're just dropping some wisdom right now. You're just dropping some bombs. I love that. And you know what that reminds me of is so many times as human beings, we make the mistake, Dominique, that we think we're human beings trying to figure out this spiritual realm, when in reality, we're spiritual beings trying to figure out how to live in this human body. And so many of us make the mistake that we think is totally opposite, when in reality, we're not human beings trying to figure out the spiritual. We're spiritual beings trying to figure out this human body. And that's why so many of us, I think we feel so empty and we feel lost, because no matter what amount of money we make, the house we buy, or how famous we may get or want to be, or even just the fact that, sometimes we think that if we buy something materialistic, it's going to help us to feel happier. And it's a temporary happiness, but to find that full fulfillment, one definitely needs to connect with their spirit. Don't you believe that?
Oh yeah, man. It's funny how so true that is, because I've been in rooms and felt energy in certain ways. Like there's been in cluttered rooms and been in uncluttered rooms. And when you're in an uncluttered area, like energy flows a lot better than a room that's cluttered. It's funny how that can actually affect your psyche in a way. And it kind of goes back to the whole POP, the place of productivity, because if you're spiritually ready, then you can be physically ready to do just about anything.
Yeah, man, woo, man, this is great. I love this. Because we're going deep, and this is so many people can't have this type of conversation because let's just face it. Sometimes we just want that instantaneous results, that instant gratification. And if you never connect with your own spirit, if you never spend time with yourself, like Dominique's saying, how are you going to realize what you like and who you are? You must spend time with yourself, and you must spend time with your creator. And for me, that's God. That's why the first thing that I do when I wake up in the morning is I try to devote at least 30 minutes to an hour of my first hour to him, because that feeds my spirit. That feeds me that living water that I need to give value to others. And I think you're 100% correct, because so many of us, if we don't spend that time with ourselves, spend that time with our creator, Dominique, we're never going to have that. I call it that sixth sense, just that intuition that when the Holy Spirit speaks to you, like, you know what, do this, don't do this. And for me, what you said, it just reminds me of one of my favorite scriptures, is that says that God is my confidence. And when you realize that my confidence comes from God, there's nothing that you can overcome or take on, because with his confidence, you can win in any aspect of your life. I love that, man. You're just dropping some bombs here, my friend. I appreciate you just doing that. Let's change the story here a little bit. I want to ask you this. What makes Dominique Brightmon distinctive? What makes him distinctive that separates him from the masses?
Yes. What makes me distinctive and separates me from the masses and the molasses? Yes.
I hope you said what I think you said. But
Yep, the molasses.
Okay, the molasses. Okay, there's the molasses. I heard the molasses. Okay, that's what I heard.
Don't worry. I'm not going to kill the last 10 minutes or whatever I just said with that one.
I just like to make it laugh. I like to have fun. We can have a serious conversation and make it enjoyable. But
amen to that, dude.
What makes you distinctive? What makes Dominique Brightmon just distinctive? Besides the molasses.
What makes me distinctive is the fact that I believe in advancement, and that's my one major word that I feel like describes my life because I read this book called The Science of Getting Rich, and it's not all about actual money. It's about spiritually rich in all areas of life because you can help more people by having more access to money and influence and spiritual development on your own than you would being both financially broke and spiritually broke. And a way to advance others and advancing yourself is by advancing others. So that's my main motto, is advance others to advance yourself. And I build myself on advancement. And that's my whole theme of going north, advance others to advance yourself, embracing your dreams and helping others to embrace their dreams as well. Because if you can help others to get one step closer to embracing their dreams with both arms and heck, even legs if they get to that point, then they'll feel better about themselves. Because myself, like, of course, there was the more recent moments of confidence, but heck, even in my teenage years, I was about a good 245 pounds and overweight. And I did a lot of walking one summer before 11th grade to lose a bunch of weight. And I gained confidence because that goes back to the beginning of growth is happiness. And that was a form of advancement. And when folks see you lose 30 pounds in the summer, they're like, Dom, what did you do? And it's like, I just did all these certain things, walking, water, and all this sort of stuff, and just being that example. And if you're a living example of advancement, folks will want that advancement too, that advancing personality of making sure that you put the well-being of others in mind first in terms of how you can serve them, of like, how can I add more value to more people in less time? And that's by advancing them in whatever they may need, or at least finding the person who can give them what they need. So that what makes me distinctive from everybody else. Well, that my chocolate skin, that's pretty good too.
Man, that's an amazing answer. I love what you said. I think people might have missed this. I just want to. Dominique lost over 30 pounds walking, and I want to bring this up because I think it's a great metaphor. Because you're talking about what makes you distinctive as being advanced, right? Wanting to advancement is what makes you distinctive. You're focused on advancing yourself and advancing others, of course. And so many of us, we want to run. We want to go from A to B 120 miles an hour or 1,000 miles an hour. And you didn't lose that weight your junior year, that summer, running, going 100 miles an hour. You lost it walking. And I think so many of us, we have the misconception that advancement means these long, big strides, running like a cheetah, running like a jaguar, just running. When in reality, the best advancement sometimes is just walking like that tortoise. And over the course of the summer, you lost over 30 pounds. And look at the amazing results you get. And I think so many of us, going back to what you said earlier, that we're playing that comparison game. And instead of running in your lane, you look to the left of you and you see somebody else going a little bit faster than you. And then instead of playing your game was walking. You just walked. And you were successful at that, and you attained your goal of losing that 30 pounds. But so many of us, we look to the lane to the left, to the right of us, and we see them going 100 miles an hour, comparing ourselves. And the result of doing that, we don't even walk. We just stop doing what we're doing because we feel like we're not good enough at that moment. What do you say to that?
Hey, man, I love what you said there. It's true, man. It's kind of like this whole Japanese concept of Kaizen, continuous incremental improvement. Because increments is really where it happens. It goes back to the cliche. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you go forward? One step at a time. We got 2 feet. We can only really take one step forward or maybe jump forward, but you can only jump so far ahead depending on how much you do squats and exercise and all the other good stuff. But yeah, it's all about incremental improvement, taking that increments to build up over time. It's like, hey, it may suck and you may feel like if you look next to somebody. Funny enough, that actually reminds me of that meme of Michael Phelps and his rival at one point when he last won some Olympic gold medals, where's a picture of Michael focusing ahead on the goal and his rival busy focusing on him. And heck, even for the younger crowd, it's like Goku and Vegeta. Goku's focusing on becoming the best version of himself as a fighter, and Vegeta's focusing on becoming a better than Goku himself. And it's really about focus, of focusing and keeping your mind on the goal. It's like, okay, how far do I want to go? And focusing on how far and how much action you can take to get there, because action has no season. If you keep taking massive intentional action, or even incremental intentional action, it's better to have that action and get there, whether it's incremental or even at a massive scale, as opposed to focusing on someone else and trying to copy or beat them. So focusing on how you can better yourself, as opposed to trying to be competitive and trying to be better than them. Try to be better than yourself.
I love that. Try to be better than yourself. Instead of trying to be better than other people, ladies and gentlemen, try to be better than your old self. Be better than that old version of you that no longer serves you, that you outgrew a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So many of us are holding on to that older version of ourselves. And the problem with that is you keep saying, remember when, remember when. If you talk to your friends and your family and all you talk about is 75% of the time memories of the past, that means you're not moving forward. So stop saying, remember when we used to do this, remember when we used to do that, and just be like Dominique. Look forward. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what I'm going to look like once I walk every day at the end of summer? Can you imagine me being 30 pounds lighter? Right? So if you're one of those people right now that's saying, remember when we used to do this, or the good old times? Can't you remember the good old times? No. That mindset's going to keep you stuck in a rut, and be like Dominique and say, I'm advancing myself, even if I'm just walking one day at a time. Because at the end of the day, you still finish at the finish line, do you not, Dominique?
Oh yeah, kind of like the whole nice guys finish last. It's like, hey, at least I finished. It's like,
Well, yeah, I'm glad you said that, because it's not a matter of so many of us. I'm glad you said that, because so many of us start, but you know that. Think about this: 100% of entrepreneurs start, but less than 10% finish. Think about that.
It's true. It's so true.
Think about that, right? Doesn't matter. I finished. You're finished. You've been an entrepreneur now for over that I've known you. I was on your podcast going on 3 years ago. I mean, you've been at this for well over a year. And most entrepreneurs within the first year, less than 10% make it past the first year. So by you finishing every year for the last 3 years that I've known you, dude, you're doing it. It doesn't matter if you're walking. At least you finished. And that finishing is what gives you that confidence, that gives you that consistency. And I want to ask you this. What are his convictions? What does he stand for?
Yes. So first off, I'm a Christian young man. I was raised in a Baptist church all my life, and God first, because Christ died on the cross for me and my sins, and I'm better for it. I'm better for it. That's one of the things I stand for. And also, I'm a young black man too. That's just obvious. It's just like it's like.
Well, you said chocolate earlier, but I don't know what you were talking about. I thought you were going to give me some chocolate cake or something.
If it's a chocolate cake, I'll make sure there's no mayonnaise in it. I'll make sure that's the case, because apparently that's out there. But yeah, yep, young Christian black man who believes in helping others and also being the best version of himself. And just really helping people. That's really what I stand for, because if people didn't help me, I wouldn't be here today. Like, that's the reason why I'm here. I've had great mentors. My parents, they were great to me. My older brother, great to me. My siblings, everybody in my life, whether it meant for evil or for good, they've helped me in some way or another. Funny enough, I almost failed high school because public speaking was my worst grade. I was the worst in public speaking class, and I had this radio voice back then too, because of the whole puberty thing, and because the teachers got laid off and the principal's wife was teaching, and we only had one quiz that I didn't know was a quiz, and I got a 30 on that quiz, and I had like an F, and I'm like, oh crap. And yeah, so yeah, man, no matter what happens, that's what I stand for, just helping others, because folks have helped me, and it's only fitting that I pay it forward, whether it's at a small or large scale where I am now, and not waiting until I get to a higher level.
You've dropped so much wisdom today, my brother. Man, growth is happiness. That sticks out to me big time. And growth is happiness. And a lot of us ain't happy because we're not growing. And if you want to be happy, you need to grow. and you need to just finish the race. Like he said, doesn't matter if you're walking. He walked himself to lose 30 pounds that summer. So we're at the point of the show, my brother, where I want you to just leave us with either a quote or a word of wisdom that has carried you during your life and your most challenging times that you kind of always go back to. Can you share us and leave us with a word of wisdom?
Of course, I'll go with 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and a sound mind. Every day that you wake up, greet the day with love in your heart. Every day that you wake up, give gratitude and give thanks, and walk out with that confidence knowing that, hey, I may not be where I want to be now, but I'll be where I want to be in the future. And heck, where I am right now is probably where I'm supposed to be at this moment in time. So we've been given a spirit of power, of love, and a sound mind.
I love that, man. That's so powerful. That's so true. I think that's a great verse for today, right? Because so many of us are living in fear right now, and we haven't been given a spirit of fear. We haven't been given a spirit of fear. We've been given a spirit of power. And I think when we realize how to tap into that power, I think that's when our life changes for the better, because when we allow circumstances to control us, that's a powerless state of mind. But when you control your situations and your circumstances because of who you are, then that's where the power comes in. So thank you for sharing that golden nugget. If somebody wants to get hold of the great Dominique Brightmon, how do they get a hold of you, my brother?
Sure thing. They can get a hold of me with both hands on dombrightmon.com. So DOMBRIGHTMON.com. And check out the Going North podcast, especially Daniel's episode, because, man, you get to hear Daniel in his early entrepreneurial days, baby, as a motivational speaker, letting us know that we were born to fly. So definitely check out that podcast and keep supporting Daniel, because my man has been growing exponentially, my friends.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having me. You said your show. I thought I was on your show for the moment there. So, man, I'm telling you, I'm loving this time with you, man. And I just want to thank you for being on our show. It was a great pleasure having you. And like I said, please check out his podcast. Say the name of your podcast one more time, Dominique, if you don't mind.
Sure thing. Check out the Going North podcast. It can be heard wherever podcasts are. If you use Apple, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, it's all there. Going North podcast.
Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. And man, what an amazing episode. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And if you were touched by today's episode, if you got a lot of wisdom, go to our Facebook group called Distinctive Syndicate. That's Distinctive Syndicate. And we have some more content that's related to this, towards really to your personal growth, personal development. And that does include some faith-based content too. So it really helps you just to really realize that you are greatness in the making. So we'd love to have you. Just send a request to join the group at Distinctive Syndicate on Facebook. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for this week's episode. We'll see you next week. This is Daniel Gomez, and thank you so much for tuning into our show today. We'd love your feedback. Please drop us a comment, and thank you for leaving us a review. Don't forget to subscribe to our show and share this episode with a friend. And my free gift for listening to our show today is a copy of my best-selling book, You Were Born to Fly. To get your free copy, go to DanielGomezInspires.com and get your copy today. That's DanielGomezInspires.com. And to elevate your life and business even more, follow me on social media at Daniel Gomez Inspires on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Together, we will discover the key that unlocks your confidence.